The purpose of this video is to explain parts of speech and grammar terms that you will encounter as you are learning German. We will discuss terms like verb, subject, nominative case, object, accusative case, indirect object, dative case. What do they all mean and why should you care? So that you don't get eaten by a bear. That will make sense by the end of this video. So what do these terms all mean and why should you care? Well, let's start with a verb. Quite simply, it's an action. Things like biking, running, typing, reading, writing, or eating are all actions. What is a subject? It's the person or thing doing the action. You might remember that the verb is the action. To find out what the subject is, first find the verb and ask yourself, who or what is doing this action? So, if we have the sentence, the bear eats the man, what's the action here? Eating. So eating is the verb. Now, who or what is doing the action of eating? Yes, you're right, that's the bear. That means the bear is the subject. You may already know that that means we need to use the nominative case in German to show the subject. The nominative case shows the subject in German, and for a masculine noun, and a noun is a person, place, or thing, the nominative case is shown by using der as the article, such as der Bär. So, der Bär is the subject doing the action of eating. Now, what is the object here? The object is who or what receives the action. If the action is eating, who or what here is being eaten, who is receiving that action? In this case, it is this unlucky man. In German, the accusative case shows that something is the object. For a masculine noun, the accusative case is indicated by using den as the article. So, here, der Bär isst den Mann. Der Bär is the subject, doing the action, and eating the man, the object here. You may have learned that when a masculine noun changes from the subject to the object, the article changes from der to den. This change, or that is to say these endings, are not here to make your life difficult or to confuse you. In German, they are the way to make clear what is the subject and what is the object. Here's an example that will make it clear why it's so important to be able to determine what is the subject and what is the object, and how those endings make that clear. Der Bär isst den Mann. Den Mann isst der Bär. Which one means that the bear eats the man? If you said the first one, you're right. But did you know that the second one does too? English is an SVO language. That means that the word order tells us what is the subject and what the object is by the order in which they are in the sentence. First we have the subject, then we have the verb, and then we have the object. If we say, the bear eats the man, then we know from the word order that the bear is the subject and the man is the object. But German is not an SVO language. That means that the word order doesn't tell you what the subject is and what the object is. So how do you know which is which? The way we know this in German is from the article endings, so that der and den I was talking about earlier. Information can revolve around the verb in German. Think of the verb as the fixed point in a sentence. Let's use the verb ist. Information can revolve around that verb. So, just because you start with den Mann in German doesn't mean that it's the subject. The only way to know what is the subject and what is the object is by looking at those article endings. Whatever you start with is the most important information you're giving. That is, you're emphasizing that information. Makes sense. It's the first thing that you say. So if you want to emphasize that the man is being eaten by the bear, you start with the object. Den Mann isst der Bär. But this can be confusing or misleading for speakers of English because you will initially think that the first thing in the sentence is the subject. But in German, it is not necessarily so. You know that this word is not the subject because of the N ending on den, telling you that it is the object. If it were the subject, it would be der. So, der Bär isst den Mann means the bear eats the man. Den Mann isst der Bär means the same thing. We know that this is the sentence starting with the object rather than the subject as we might expect because of that den ending, that N ending. So both of these sentences mean that the bear is the subject doing the action of eating the man who is the object. The second sentence doesn't mean that the man is eating the bear. How would you say that if you wanted to say the man eats the bear? If you want to say the man eats the bear, your verb is eats, man is the subject doing the action, and bear is now the object receiving that action. So it would be der Mann isst den Bär. Remember that this can revolve around the verb and we can change the word order without changing the meaning. This second sentence still means the man eats the bear. So make sure to pay attention to those endings because of all of the information that they contain about the subject and the object. Subjects and objects are called parts of speech. We're going to talk about a few other parts of speech here. The object is also sometimes referred to as the direct object to distinguish it from the indirect object. Let's look at this sentence. The woman sells the man the flour. Now let's determine what the various parts of speech are in the sentence. First, always find the verb. That's the action, you remember. Then ask yourself, what's the action here? Selling. Now who or what is the one doing the action? Who or what is doing the action? This question will tell you who or what the subject is in the sentence. In this case, of course, it's the woman. Now ask yourself who or what object is receiving the action. This tells us the object, also called the direct object because it's directly receiving the action. Please note that she is not selling the man. We don't want any human trafficking here. Rather, she's selling the flour to the man. This is what's called the indirect object. The indirect object tells us to whom or for whom something is happening. As you already know, word order tells us this in English, but in German, this is expressed by the dative case and the article endings for the dative case. So this sentence in German is Die Frau verkauft dem Mann die Blume. So the action is verkaufen. That's our verb. Who or what is selling? The woman. That's our subject. What is she selling? What object? Die Blume. That's our direct object. And then to whom is she selling it? That is our indirect object. And for that, as I just said, we use the dative case. So to review, use the nominative case to indicate the subject. Use the accusative case to indicate the object or the direct object, and the dative case to indicate the indirect object. Some people find it useful to have a trick to remember the endings for the dative called Mr. Man. Mr. Man, which stands for the M in dame when you have a masculine noun, the R in der when you have a feminine noun, the M for a neuter noun, and the N-N for the plural. When you have a plural noun in German, you add an N to the noun as well. So these are the article endings for nouns when you are trying to indicate that they are the indirect object, and so need to use the dative case. To someone or for someone. So look carefully at the article endings in these sentences to determine what parts of speech and which cases are being used. Der Mann isst den Kuchen. Find your verb and look at those article endings to figure out which one is the subject and which one is the object. What do you think this sentence means? If you said the man eats the cake, you're right. But that one was pretty similar to English and SVO, subject-verb-object, a subject-verb-object word order. How about this one, though? Den Kuchen isst der Bär. Who or what is doing the eating here? Is it the bear or is it the cake? Look carefully at those endings to determine which is the subject and which is the object. Der Mann isst den Bär. Who's doing the eating and who is being eaten? Who is the subject and who is the object here? Remember to pay careful attention to those article endings to figure out who is the subject and who is the object. Here, the man eats the bear. Thankfully this time, it's just a gummy bear. And what about this sentence? Den Kuchen gibt der Mann dem Bär. Who is doing the action of giving? Der Mann. That R tells us that he is the subject. Now what is the object that he's giving? Den Kuchen. Even though we're starting with it, it can still be the object, also called the direct object. And then to whom is he giving the cake? To the bear, the indirect object. Hopefully, you now know that the first words you encounter in a German sentence aren't always the subject. And you now know what the grammar term subject means. You have a method for figuring out what the subject and what the object and what the indirect object are in a sentence. You know to start with the verb, the action in a sentence. And once you've figured out what the action is, you can ask a series of questions to determine what the other parts of speech are. You can find the direct object by asking, who or what is receiving the action? You can find out the indirect object by asking, to whom or for whom is the action happening? And then hopefully you won't mistakenly have any men eating bears, unless of course that's what you're meaning to say.